My name is Victor Furman. Some call me The Voice. I've always been fascinated with human nature, spirituality, science, and the crossroads at which they meet. Join me now and we will explore these topics and so much more with fascinating guests, authors, and experts who will guide us to Destination Unlimited. In 1965, Jonathan King released the song Everyone's Gone to the Moon. Is it possible that his lyrics touched upon a secret truth, that the moon has been inhabited long before life on Earth and is actually a spacecraft? My guest this week on Destination Unlimited, Constance Victoria Briggs, is an author, researcher, and public speaker specializing in these questions and other cosmic mysteries. She's been featured on Coast to Coast AM with George Noory, The Leak Project, Earth Ancients, Broadcast Team Alpha, Forbidden Knowledge, Spaced Out Radio, and others. Her website is ConstanceVictoriaBriggs.com, and she joins me this week to share her path and groundbreaking book, The Moon's Galactic History, a look at the moon's extraterrestrial past and its connection to Earth. Please join me in welcoming back to Destination Unlimited, Constance Victoria Briggs. Welcome, Constance.
Hi, Victor. Thank you for having me on today and having me return.
Constance, for our listeners meeting you for the first time, please share with us your early path and what sparked your interest in the cosmic mysteries.
You know, since I was a young child, I always had an interest in the idea of other people being, out in the universe and out in space, and there being other worlds, other planets that were inhabited. And I always imagined that we weren't alone in the universe and there was a lot going on out there. And I felt that it was kind of even a pull for me to go and investigate as I became older exactly, what is going on out there. I was very much interested in a child in things like Star Trek and Lost in Space, and I think they inspired me to go down this path.
Have you been personally either a contactee or experiencer?
So I feel that I am a contactee, but not in some of the ways I see people online, who are having these physical manifestations, at their bedside. Mine, I've always referred to mine as spiritual guides. These days I call them star guides. I've always felt a presence. I've always felt that, at least in my research and my writing, that there was someone there guiding me. I believe that, there are many type of guides in the universe. I do believe there are angelic guides. I believe that there are guides from relatives that have crossed over. But I also believe that there are extraterrestrial guides, people that we cannot see, that are working with people today to try to get out the information to humanity that we are not alone in the universe and that there's more to it. I think that some of us, people have come in, we use the term starseeds and light workers, wanderers, used to be a term that was used for people that are here to disseminate this information. So yes, I feel that I have guides that are from elsewhere that are helping me with this work.
As I had shared with you a little earlier, we must be soul family, because I feel the same way. And I don't know if I shared this with you the last time, but as a child in the 1950s, specifically when I was 5 years old, which would have been 1958, I had a series of experiences that I referred to as night school, where the visitors would come, take me to a special classroom, and give me information that I had absolutely no other source for. And again, as a 5-year-old in the 1950s, most of the children my age would be interested in toy trucks or toy soldiers. I wanted to build electronic radios, and I built my first crystal radio when I was 6 years old. And my parents would say I had an overactive imagination. Nobody really believed believed me. And my mother, who passed in 2020, in the last few months of her life, I would visit her and bring her lunch. And we had a conversation, and I said, Mom, you never believed me about all the things I shared when I was a kid. You never had any strange experiences, did you? She said, no, except for that time you were about a year old and the hair on the back of my neck began standing up. She said you were about a year old, which would have been January, February of 1954.
Mhm.
She said it was 3:30 in the morning. You were crying. I got up to make you a bottle. I went into the kitchen and this odd light came through the window. And that's the last thing I remember until the next day. I said, Mom, thank you so much for confirming everything I
Oh my
knew was
goodness.
happening as a child. And I'm grateful that she gave me that information.
Wow, that's amazing. I love that.
Thank you. Now, you're a prolific researcher and author with several books covering spiritual and cosmic mysteries. The last time you were on, we discussed Earth's galactic history and its extraterrestrial connection. Today, we'll discuss the moon's galactic history, but please share with us what inspired the Earth's galactic history and what you offered your readers.
I believe that we are being visited by extraterrestrials. And from my research, it was my understanding that this visitation has been going on since ancient times. You hear some of the ufologists today discussing this topic, and they say, this has been going on. It started in the 1940s, but that's not the way I see it. I see it differently. I believe that we've been visited from ancient times up until now. And I wanted to put a book out there that kind of explained that idea and gave some examples of what happened in ancient times. For example, I have in my book that the Egyptians, ancient Egypt, they have in their writings that they saw basically a fleet of UFOs in the skies, and it was a big deal. I mean, they didn't use the term, of course, UFOs, but what they were describing was a fleet of these strange spheres in the sky. And, it was a visitation. I have given other examples. Even one in one of my books talked about someone who was approached by being that had come from the stars and invited to ride on their ship and taken away, just like we hear today. It was not an abduction. It was a contactee that was invited aboard a ship. And that was from ancient times. So I talked about things like that. And that was my inspiration, because after I wrote the Moon book, that book came after the moon's galactic history, which we will be talking about today. After I wrote the Moon book, people wanted more details about Earth. They were like, great, that's amazing what's going on with the moon and the universe, but what's going on right here on Earth? So that's where the Earth's galactic history came from.
In terms of your research and understanding, why do you think we have such Earth centricity in cultures up until the time that we had the experiences in the 1940s?
I think that there are extraterrestrials out there that are attempting these days to bring us up to speed as to who we are, where we came from, and what really is going on in the galaxy. I think that they are trying to slowly let us know that we're not alone, and they are waiting for us to come into what is a galactic community out there that, for the most part, the masses are not aware of. But those of us in the research, those of us who have had experiences, contact and channelings from beings letting us know that they're there, I think we're being prepared. And that's the reason we're seeing so many UFOs and hearing so much more about contact experiences. Up until this point, I think they were helping us along in life. The ancient texts talk about extraterrestrials bringing us knowledge. An early race of beings, we really didn't know how to take care of ourselves way back then. They brought us knowledge of how to, grow our food. And, they taught us about cleanliness and how not to be wild and all of that stuff at that time. But as we have been moving along, they've always been there. They've been always watching, trying to let us progress on our own, to the point today where they're preparing us slowly for that, what we call first contact, even though we've had contact, but I'm talking about first contact of the masses.
2019 brought your Encyclopedia of Moon Mysteries. I was 16 when Apollo 11 landed on the moon and was fascinated by the seeming change in Neil Armstrong's personality in the years after his return. As I shared, today we'll be discussing your second book on lunar mysteries, The Moon's Galactic History. What inspired you to write that second book?
When the Encyclopedia of Moon Mysteries came out, it is an encyclopedia with articles that people could look things up, Neil Armstrong, Apollo missions, things like that, the little articles. But people wanted more, at least the people I talked to said, oh, are you going to write another book on the moon? They wanted to hear my voice. They wanted me to explain things in greater detail. They wanted me to go deeper. So that's why I wrote The Moon's Galactic History.
Why do you think the moon has been a source of fascination since ancient times?
It's beautiful to look at. It is a helper to us. It lights our path and lights our way at night. At least that's the way the ancients saw it. They worshipped it as a god. They didn't have any explanation for this amazing sphere in the sky. They fell in love with it. So that is my explanation for the ancients. Today, honestly, I'm finding people, Victor, are less interested and the masses are less interested in the moon. They see it as a beautiful but dead rock in the sky. So that's a little disappointing when I talk to people. Well, there's nothing going on in the moon. But for those interested, they are fascinated because for those interested, we did go to the moon, and people want to know what was found, what was seen on the moon. And a little information is, coming out here and there that people are getting these days. They are hearing that, something else is going on, that maybe there's something up there. So we've got two train of thoughts. One, you have people not interested like they were in our history. And two, you've got those who, think, maybe there is something more to the moon. So I'm dealing with two different mindsets when I'm discussing and I'm trying to explain to those who don't believe anything's going on. I'm trying to give them this whole dissertation of what might be happening. And for those interested, they're a little bit more, absorbing the information. So.
Our moon is an anomaly, isn't it?
It is an anomaly. It is so strange. And I tell you, growing up, I never would have suspected as much. Many of us know that the moon doesn't, it's only showing one face to us at all times. We only see what we call the front, not the dark side of the moon. So that's strange. There's no other, I believe, moon in our solar system that behaves that way. It's almost as if it was designed so that we don't see the dark side or the far side, we can call it, or, of what's going on back there. So that's strange. Also, the fact that the moon itself is just so big to be a natural satellite. There was the very famous Isaac Asimov, one of my favorite writers. I'm, reading his books now, these days. But he was saying that there's no reason for the moon to be there. What in the world's going on? Or something like this. He said, it's too big, to be a natural satellite. He didn't believe, and a lot of people don't believe, that it was caught in Earth's gravity. So, he was saying, what is it? Why is it there? Just the idea that it is existing is an anomaly. The scientist cannot explain what it is or where it came from. Now, I grew up thinking that it was, capture, the whole capture theory is captured in Earth's gravity, but the scientists dismissed that. They said, nope, that's not it. And then they thought it was from a giant impact, that it was developed from a planet the size of Mars hitting Earth, and then, the Earth spewing out into the universe. When it slammed into it, the elements of Earth spewed out, and eventually it, formed the moon. That's where it came from. But they eventually, we call that the big whack theory, by the way, or the giant impact theory is another term. But now they've dismissed that. And if you go on NASA's website, they basically say in so many words, we really don't know, where it came from. We think it's the giant impact theory. But, if you read it, I can't quote it. I can't remember the quote, but basically they don't know where it came from, and they are still trying to figure it out. It is an anomaly in so many ways.
It is also an anomaly because of its location and its size with relativity to eclipses, because when we have a total eclipse of the sun, the moon actually is the exact right size to completely block it out.
Yes. So there is some food of thought behind that. That should not be happening. The chances of such a thing occurring are just, minute, almost zero. That, we can have these eclipses where everything is lining up at what looks like, the exact same size. That's ridiculous. But the food of thought behind that is that the moon was brought in here by advanced beings from even a different universe, and that the eclipses, is a sign, not a religious sign, but a sign that there was intelligent thought behind this, that they were hoping that humanity would reach a state where we would recognize that this was a very slim chance of occurrence, and that someone must have planned it, so that we would look up at one of those at the eclipse and say, that's just too weird. Mathematically speaking, it's too weird. Someone put this there. And that is the message to let us know that we are not alone in the universe.
And the other aspect is, if we did not have the moon in its position, what would happen to gravity on Earth? What would happen to the tides and the oceans? What would happen?
Right. So everything would change here. There would be, it would be a different world. There would be storms and catastrophes, and the idea is that the Earth would be bouncing around, not bouncing or spinning in different ways. That the seasons would be off. Everything, it would be a disaster, and it couldn't support life as we know it today. Now, there is a scientist who had made the comment, that maybe there could have been some life, but certainly not everything that we're seeing. And we wouldn't have the same world that we know of today, which is another idea behind, advanced beings intelligently placing the moon where it is. The thought by some is that someone looked at Earth, perhaps after even terraforming this world, and they looked at Earth and said, we put this gigantic structure here, it will balance everything and life will thrive there. And it does.
And also the emotional impact of the moon.
It is thought that the moon is responsible for behavior of humanity when there's a full moon. There have been emergency people and nurses and doctors who have said that hospitals are fuller, or there's more people in the hospital during a full moon because there's more, accidents, there's more violence, that the moon affects our emotional state. Also because our bodies are, made up of water. That pull, when there's a gravitational pull, that sometimes, we're feeling it. And that, it affects our emotional state. And then sometimes, like I said, we can even become violent or depressed or whatever from behind that.
And the moon has inspired poetry. It's inspired romance. It's inspired so many things. And we get the term lunacy from the moon.
Yeah, that's where the term lunacy comes from, people going crazy. Like I said, there are more emergency cases when there's a full moon.
Absolutely. My guest is Constance Victoria Briggs. We're talking about her book, The Moon's Galactic History, a look at the moon's extraterrestrial past and its connection to Earth. Constance, please share with our listeners where they can get all of your books and find out more about you.
I am fortunate to be published by Adventures Unlimited Press. David Hatcher Childress is my editor of Ancient Aliens. So you can go to that website, Adventures Unlimited Press, and get my books. And of course, the easier way is to go to Amazon, where all of my books are. You can look me up if you have Facebook. You can just go to Constance Victoria Briggs. I have a Moon Mysteries page, Constance Victoria Briggs Moon Mysteries. I'm also on Instagram under Galactic Briggs. You can go to my website too. I'm going to get a blog going where I'm going to be putting up more on Moon Mysteries. ConstanceVictoriaBriggs.com is my website, and that is where you can find that blog. You can also contact me through that page.
And we'll be back with more of Constance after these words on the Om Times Radio Network.
The best of the holistic, spiritual, and conscious world. Om Times Radio. IOM FM. Om Times Magazine is one of the leading online content providers of positivity, wellness, and personal empowerment. A philanthropic organization, their net proceeds are funneled to support worldwide charity initiatives via Humanity Healing International. Through their commitment to creating community and providing conscious content, they aspire to uplift humanity on a global scale. Om Times, co-creating a more conscious lifestyle.
Hello, I'm Sandy Sedgbeer, host of Om Times Magazine's flagship radio show, What is Going Om. My passion is sifting through information, research, and innovations from new thought teachers, speakers, and researchers pushing back the boundaries of what we know about life, energy, metaphysics, and the universe. I love shifting perceptions about who we are, why we're here, and how quickly impossible becomes normal when we open our minds, expand our awareness, and accept that the only limits that exist are those we place upon ourselves. So if you're the kind of forward-thinking, eager investigator of what lies beyond the current reality that most perceive, why not make a date to come play with me in the field of possibilities at 4 p.m. Pacific Time, 7 p.m. Eastern Time every Thursday, and together we can discover what's really going on.
As veterans, we're no strangers to helping others.
It's what we were taught, trained, and told to do.
It could be for anything. Helping a friend move.
Listening to a fellow veteran for hours, at any hour of the day.
Or just simply making time for people. A neighbor, a loved one, or even a stranger.
We're often the first to help others. There's no question about it.
But we do have one question for the veterans listening.
When was the last time you reached out for help?
Perhaps it's time to do for yourself what you would do for others.
If you or someone you know needs resources, whether it's for stress, finances, employment, or mental health, don't wait. Reach out.
Find more information at va.gov/reach. That's va.gov/reach.
Brought to you by the United States Department of Veterans Affairs and the Ad Council.
Back on Destination Unlimited, my guest this week, Constance Victoria Briggs. We're talking about her book, The Moon's Galactic History, a look at the moon's extraterrestrial past and its connection to Earth. Constance, what did the early astronomers think about the moon?
You know, Victor, I find this to be one of the most fascinating things. The early astronomers, you wouldn't believe it, but they believed that the moon was inhabited. Why did they believe the moon was inhabited? Because they were seeing things up there. Things were moving, and they were baffled. They were blown away, and they were excited. about what they were seeing since the beginning of the creation of the telescope. They saw things. They saw lights moving. They saw what one of them described as, they thought they were insects or some kind of animal moving across the surface. They believed that the moon was very much like Earth and that it had rivers and valleys and canyons and plains. And they weren't wrong. What we see today when we think of the moon is we just see what looks like a flat surface of a round sphere. No, the moon has areas that even one area is called the Grand Canyon of the moon. It has hills, it has valleys, it has all of the stuff, that they had described. But we, for whatever reason, only get certain images of the moon. So they believed that there was someone there, and it was considered scientific fact up until a point when that idea disappeared. So, how do we know what they thought? Well, it was back in the early days, there was the British Astronomical Society, where it's centuries old. This society, and they were collecting information from astronomers around the world and writing it down. And the NASA actually put together a book that you can actually pick up on Amazon. It is the NASA Lunar Technical Report that goes back to all the way to those early days. And they have the names of the astronomers, some very famous ones. And they would write down what they saw. For example, they may have seen a red light on a crater for 2 hours. They would write it down. They would write down the name of the crater. Sometimes they were seeing, lights, like I said, moving across, etc. So we have the records, and that's why they believed there was someone there. It wasn't until what we call our modern times, where the scientists looked at the moon and they said, you know what, the days are too hot, the nights are too cold, nothing can survive there. But they never explained to us who was causing all that commotion, who was causing all the movements up there. So that's what the early astronomers believed up until the modern day scientists said, that can't be a possibility. Were they onto something?
Absolutely, they were onto something. You had mentioned about the fact that people think that the moon is artificial and created by extraterrestrials. What are some other theories about the moon's origin and how it came to be here?
So the origin of the moon is very interesting when it comes to some of the theories. So one of them, and my favorite one, is the spaceship moon theory. There are those that believed, and there have been, a couple of books written about this idea, that advanced beings built the moon, or they either built it or took a hollowed out planetoid and turned it into a ship, and sent this thing across space and placed it here. Now, what's interesting about this theory is that there are two stories behind it that I feel, kind of, corroborates it a little bit. So there's a story from ancient times from an ancient tribe out of Africa who said, their tale says the moon was a hollowed out egg that was hollowed out by two brothers. Of course, we would know these as extraterrestrial beings that hollowed the egg out and sent it across the universe and placed it in Earth's vicinity. Now, what's so interesting about that? That could be mythology from anywhere, right? The problem with that is there are stories from ancient times where some of the famous writers talked about a time where the Earth, as they were told, was there was no moon in the sky, and that there were catastrophes on Earth when the moon came in. How could ancient writers know this if someone hadn't told them or shown, or shown this, I don't know, in a vision or told them this, but they wrote it down, and we have those writings till today. Also, there is a megalith in Bolivia, an ancient stone megalith that has symbols on it that also talks about the moon being coming into Earth's Earth's vicinity and causing all kinds of disasters. That again from ancient times. Now, what's really interesting is that when the Apollo astronauts went up, they brought back, as we know, rocks and dirt and things from the moon to study. And they brought back data from the moon as to how it functions from their perspective. There were two Russian scientists that worked for the government that came forward and put their reputations on the line when they said this. They said that they believed that the moon is what they called a spaceship. They said when they look at the elements that made up the moon, when they look at the shell of the moon, that it's very hard. The astronauts couldn't even drill into it. All right. That what it's made from looks like it was a fortified creation designed to be protected from something as it was sent. And they said this, as it was sent across the universe and placed here. And they believed that there were things inside of it like, engines and a whole race of beings that were, there prepared for travel across the universe. So that's one theory, and they call it the spaceship moon theory. Many people who do this kind of research have now heard the terminology for that. The other idea is very similar, of course, and that is even if it's not a spaceship, some people believe, some scientists and ufologists and researchers are calling it a megastructure, that this thing was created there for a group of extraterrestrials to inhabit. And it may be inhabited, yes, but also it is thought that whomever is there may be observing Earth and other areas of the galaxy from there and reporting back to someone, about what's going on. So it may, be a megastructure that, of course, goes still back to it being inhabited.
And of course, with the hollow theory, there have been tests that caused a ringing to take place.
Right. Now, people think that, some people would think when they hear it that this was something that was made up. It was a hoax. It wasn't a hoax. NASA scientists came out when they first crashed what is the name is the ascent stage from the lunar module. So the astronauts' ship was made up, of the command module where they, went up into space, and then they had to take the lunar module down to the surface of the moon, and they had a piece of this is referred to as the ascent stage that they, discarded when they were going back from the surface to the command module. They sent this thing into the moon, and they crashed it, and the moon reverberated. And according to NASA scientists, of course, that shouldn't have happened, because if it did, that would mean, this thing, rang like a bell. It didn't really ring. Of course, it was, shaking. It was rocking. It was reverberating, and it shouldn't be doing that unless it's hollow. Those were the scientists that said that in a press conference. And they even said, we'd rather not comment on it, but this is what it looks like. Now, that too falls in line with the idea that the moon, is inhabited, that there is someone inside, and also whoever it is using the surface of the moon, as from we can tell if we do get into the structures there. So that it is inhabited. What's also interesting, it is thought that maybe, as the Russian scientists said, that whomever is occupying the moon may be generations. Could be a generational ship if it really was sent across the universe, which would take, so long, thousands and thousands of years, unless they're using, what I call the extraterrestrial, freeway made up of wormholes and stargates and things. But anyway, this generational ship would have had people, these people lived and died, as generations developed and went and came until they arrived here. It may be a generational spaceship or megastructure.
What about UFO and UAP sightings around the moon?
So there have been today, I talked about the ancient astronomers, not ancient, the astronomers of old, seeing lights. Well, they call them lights. Sometimes they refer to them as stars. Today, we would refer to them as UFOs. So they were seeing them then, and we're seeing them now. And it's not just professionals, it is amateur, because amateurs too, we have so many cameras everywhere that people are seeing UFOs or UAPs leaving the moon, entering and exiting the moon, coming and going out of craters. And when I first saw that, I thought, God, where are they going? Are they coming here? Are they going to different areas of the universe? Could there be beings that are meeting on the moon? And, some believe that it is kind of like a way station where, they come in and they go and they have meetings and they go. Could that be a thing? And could some of them be coming here and be the UAPs? I don't know. Maybe.
I mentioned Neil Armstrong's change in demeanor upon returning from the moon. Did other Apollo astronauts have any strange encounters on their journeys to the moon?
Oh, all of them did, Victor. All of them did. Every single Apollo mission has a story. All right. Now, it may not be visibly seeing an extraterrestrial being, as is said to have happened with the Apollo 11 astronauts. But all of those missions had reported UFOs following them or strange lights following them. There are pictures. We hear of pictures being, destroyed from the missions and hidden from the missions and changed from the missions. But there still are pictures that remain of astronauts from different missions on the moon with strange lights overhead. All right. There's one, I believe it was there's two. One of them was Apollo 17, and it may have been Apollo 15, where you can see these blue lights around the astronauts on the surface. It looks like they were being probed. These strange blue lights. In one case, a couple of the astronauts were working on the surface and something flew so close by them, they thought they almost would get smacked in the head. What was that? One of the astronauts on the command module, there was an astronaut that remained in space while two were on the surface. He was seeing UFOs coming and going. And some of them called them, I think it was space birds or, space pigeons or something. They kind of named them, these white things being shot out from the moon, these UFOs. There was all kinds of stuff that they saw up there. It wasn't just the Apollo 11 astronauts.
And of course, Edgar Mitchell is famous for what he shared when he came back.
Basically said that, he felt that they were being watched on the moon the whole time and that he was sure that there was something up there and that we are not alone in the universe.
He basically said that he sensed there was a presence, right, and that presence was observing them. And when he came back to Earth, and even after he retired, he continued to have those feelings.
Yes, he started a whole program, a whole organization behind that thought.
Absolutely. IONS, the Institute of Noetic Sciences.
Yes.
Are there structures on the moon? You had talked about this earlier. Are there structures on the moon?
So, I just want to say that there are people out there who like to say, we never went to the moon. We never went to the moon. You can't say that there's people on the moon because, we never went to the moon. But however, I'm here to say that we don't need the Apollo astronauts to let us know that there's someone there. Do you know why? Because they found structures on the moon from the lunar orbiters, not the astronauts. The astronauts did see structures on the moon, But structures, the pictures that we have. So yes to your question, Victor, and we have pictures of structures on the moon that came from NASA probes going up. They found pyramids in those pictures, pyramid structures, although the astronauts took pictures of pyramids too. They found what looks like antennas on the moon, what looks like structures shaped like the Washington Monument, which is not, exactly like the pyramids, they're similar, but they found several of those up there. They took pictures of we call the Blair cuspids. That's a very old story. It's so well known now, but they found those, and they found structures that looked like they have been blown apart, like there was a war up there, So they found structures in pieces. They found things that looked like someone had been mining up there, like, some kind of, looked like equipment almost up there. So those were from the 70s, these from the orbiters going up. And some of them went up. They sent some things up, since that time. But anyway, so they have all these pictures of the structures, and some of them never made it to the public. Some of them were destroyed, but some of them got through. Now, today, we're seeing astronomers, such as a gentleman online. He's becoming, kind of popular. His name is Bruce Schwartz, and he talks about the moon, and what he's finding are buildings up there. There are what someone has said looks like a parking lot up there, because along the craters, there are these lights, and it looks like, maybe there are ships lined up around the craters, which, by the way, is something that the Apollo 11 astronauts said. They said there were ships near the craters. They also have found in some of the pictures full-on structures as if someone is using the surface. They've found roads up there, what looks like pipes up there. They're guessing that's what they are. That's what they look like. Okay. They're described as, and we don't know that that's really them, but, someone says it looks like there's almost a train tracks or something going across the moon. There's all kinds of stuff going on up there. So yeah, there are structures, and whomever is there appears to be using the hollow moon, the inside of the moon, and the surface of the moon. There's two different things going on.
My guest is Constance Victoria Briggs. Her book, The Moon's Galactic History, a look at the moon's extraterrestrial past and its connection to Earth. We'll be back with more after these words on the Om Times Radio Network.
Humanity Healing International is a small nonprofit with a big dream. Since 2007, HHI has been working tirelessly to bring help to communities with little or no hope. Our projects are not broad mandates, nor are they overnight solutions, but they bring the reassurance that no one is alone and that someone cares. To learn more, please visit humanityhealing.org. Humanity Healing is where your heart is.
Imagine yourself being transported to India, to the banks of the Ganga and an ashram in Rishikesh. Visualize that you are welcome to satsang with an American sannyasi who shares the wisdom of her guru. Your visualization has manifested. Join Sattvi Bhagawati Saraswati for inspiration and transformation every Thursday at 11 a.m. Eastern on Om Times Radio.
So I'm a cat, and I just moved in with this new human, and she's got this little toy she's always playing with, all day long. Tap, 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 bloop, bloop. She can't put it down. There it is. Oh, and get this. She even talks to it. Last week, she asked it for Chinese, and guess what? Egg rolls showed up. Like magic. Humans have cool toys.
A person is the best thing to happen to a shelter pet. Be that person. Adopt. Brought to you by the Ad Council and the ShelterPetProject.org.
Hi, this is Bill Maher. I can find humor in almost anything, but one thing I never laugh about is cruelty to animals. If you don't get the joke either, write People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals, 501 Front Street, Norfolk, Virginia, 23510.
Back on Destination Unlimited, my guest this week, Constance Victoria Briggs. Her book, The Moon's Galactic History, a look at the moon's extraterrestrial past and its connection to the Earth. Constance, what is transient lunar phenomenon?
Transient lunar phenomenon, also known as lunar transient phenomenon, same thing, is the lights that are seen on the moon. All right, so let me explain. I explained a little of this earlier. Early astronomers saw it, and today they are also seeing it. So there are strange happenings on the moon when it comes to movement. Lights have been seen in the craters on the moon. I told you around the edges of the craters, in the sky above the moon. They've even been seen during lunar eclipses. And because originally they didn't have the word UFO, they use the word lights and stars, but these things have been seen for centuries. Now, they're seen in all colors. You know, for example, people will see 3 blue lights moving across the surface. They're seen in all geometric shapes. They've seen to some of them have materialized into what looks like a lines going across the moon, like expanding and stretching out, just like some of the UFOs we've seen here. You know, they've seen triangular shaped lights. Those lights are the lunar transient phenomena, because they just didn't know what they were at the time. They didn't have any other way of expressing or explaining what they were seeing. So, but if you ask me, they are UFOs. Now, they could be, a lot of them just could be lights. I tell people they could be lights of the extraterrestrials, or I want to say star people up there, just going about their business. I mean, maybe, some of these lights are just normal activity for another world. And people are going to say, oh, that's a stretch. That's just kind of crazy. But, if there are ETs out there looking back at Earth, we've got lights all over the place. We've got airplanes flying around in the sky at night that looks like lights. So, yeah, that's what I think is going on. I think it is a combination of UFOs, ships moving around, and other things, activity that whomever is up there may be doing. We also may be seeing lights from the buildings going on and off, lights from bases. And the astronauts talked about domed lights that they saw, on the surface. They saw these lighted domes. What was that? Well, it looked like there may have been an energy source, beneath the surface. But anyway, the moving lights that are unexplained are the lunar transient phenomena.
And you had mentioned before about remnants of what appear to be mining operations. Are there elements that we found on the moon that would be worth taking the effort to mine the moon for humanity?
Well, that would be helium-3. Helium-3, the moon is full of this, and I'm not a scientist. I don't know a lot about that, but you have to mine for the helium-3, and that could be what they're looking for. We don't have much of it here on Earth, and there are some thought that the governments here are kind of making a race, a beeline to the moon to see who can get there first to get the helium-3, although I don't know how they would transport it, but that's not my area. But here's the interesting thing. So one of the contactees that claimed to have gone to the moon said he went to the moon, and I believe him. He said when he went, he was taken to an area where there were ships coming in, and there was bartering going on. So ETs were bringing goods to the moon, and in exchange for something. So who knows what other resources are up there that we or others might be interested in. Thus, maybe the mining equipment that they saw.
In addition to the lights and the transient lunar phenomenon, are there other signs or signals or messages that there may be extraterrestrials present?
So there are a couple that stand out for me. When the astronauts on the first mission that they went to the far side of the moon, they were out of touch with mission control for 1 hour. And during that time, they heard strange noises. Now, they refer to these noises jokingly as space music. They weren't really hearing music. They were hearing strange and odd sounds that they shouldn't have been. And there is a recording of this where you can hear the astronauts talking amongst themselves saying, what's that noise? It's going, ooh, what is that? That shouldn't be happening. And should we report it? They're going to think we're crazy. Or, because they, they risk their careers when they reported seeing strange lights sometimes and hearing things. And, they didn't want to do that. So they weren't sure that they should report it. So to me, I believe that may have been ET related. Maybe they were picking up on some sort of, radio signals. I'm not a scientist. Or maybe there may have been extraterrestrials that were trying to communicate with them in some way. So what's interesting about that is I believe it was Gordon Cooper who was on a mission, not on the moon, but, while in Earth's atmosphere that was picking up some strange noises too. And I was wondering when I read his story if ETs may have been trying to communicate there as well. There is a story that one of the astronomers had seen lights blinking on the moon, almost looking like a Morse code kind of thing. And it seemed like to him, there may have been someone trying to let Earth know that they were there. And I found that very interesting because, it was like, an large area of the moon was just lit up and blinking on and off. There are also some areas where they looked like there was some movement on the moon where someone was building something and then taking it down, almost as if it was some sort of message so that we would notice it, this movement going up and down. And so there have been some odd things going on up there that, people have speculated may have been extraterrestrials trying to let us know they exist. Another thing that happened is while in space, one of the missions picked up a foreign language, and that's not well known. And this has happened a couple of times. And I believe, again, that the first one was near Earth, and it may have been, because I get them confused sometimes, all these astronauts. It may have been Gordon Cooper who was flying during one of the missions, perhaps the Mercury missions, who reported a strange language. But also one of the astronauts out there during the Apollo missions reported the same thing. And they did bring that recording back to Earth. And they tried to interpret it. Nobody could. They just didn't know the language. So again, was that extraterrestrials trying to reach, humans to let us know they were there?
So now the next question, and this is a loaded question for you. After all the research and work that you've done, do you personally believe that the moon is inhabited?
I absolutely believe the moon is inhabited. I mean, what else could it be? When we're seeing movement, UFOs, structures, strange languages, strange signals. Of course, there's someone on the moon. I'm just waiting to find out who exactly it is. In my book, The Moon's Galactic History, I did put in some information on extraterrestrials that, may be up there. But of course, it's all speculation and theory. But someone's there. Someone is there. And the question is, do they come to Earth? Have they been to Earth? If the moon really was brought in, did the beings on the moon first leave there and come here? Are we related to them? Also, there are ancient tales on Earth to talk about a time when the gods which of course were extraterrestrial beings. That's a whole other book. When the gods were leaving Earth and traveling into the stars, traveling to the moon and traveling out into the universe. You can find this information in the Sanskrit writings from the Indian culture, and where these vehicles that they had could go out and visit the moon. So I think that there was a time where we did that. We visited the moon, and we came back.
My guest, Constance Victoria Briggs, her book, The Moon's Galactic History, a look at the moon's extraterrestrial past and its connection to Earth. Constance, one more time, please share with our listeners where they can get all of your fabulous books and learn more about you.
You can go to Amazon.com, where you can find all of my books. Adventures Unlimited Press has the Earth's Galactic History, the Moon's Galactic History, and the Encyclopedia of Moon Mysteries, but they are also on Amazon. You can go to my website if you'd like to contact me. I look forward to, contacting questions. www.ConstanceVictoriaBriggs.com. And I'm on Facebook all over the place. Just look for Constance Victoria Briggs, Moon Mysteries. You can look for that one. Instagram @Galactic Briggs.
Constance, thank you so much for joining us again and sharing all of this wonderful information. And maybe that light that's flashing that's been seen on the moon, maybe that signal was an SOS. What do you think?
Yeah, it could have been SOS. Who knows? Who knows what's going on up there?
Constance, thank you so much.
Thank you, Victor. Thanks for having me on.
And thank you for joining us on Destination Unlimited. I'm Victor, the Voice Furman. Have a wonderful week.